Hello and welcome to another edition of Business PNG. I'm Festus Maiginat, and in this edition we take a look at the story of a successful retail wholesale business. Yes, you're right, the City Pharmacy Group. The CPL Group of companies has been in operation for 28 years now, starting out as a pharmacy chain and eventually growing into the retail wholesale organization. Ms. Geno spoke to the founder and chairman recently about the business.
Thank you for joining us. I have with me today Mr. Mahesh Patel, the chairman of the CPL Group. Welcome to the show,
Thank
Mahesh.
you.
Mahesh, tell us what drew you to PNG all those years ago and a little of how you started up.
God, that's a long story. That's a very long story. Listen, this was back in 1984. I just graduated out of pharmacy school in New Zealand. And Papua New Guinea was one of these fascinating places to visit. I mean, I'm from Fiji originally, as you know, so I went to Fiji and I had a job offer in Papua New Guinea back in 84. Came here, thought I'll do 2 years, do my work and head back to Fiji. I suppose I never went back. So 28 years later, I'm here.
Why the retail industry? Why did you decide to go into that?
Well, from education, I'm a pharmacist by profession. So I came here working for a pharmacy in Turama in 84. I worked there and really saw an opportunity where at that point of time, back in 84, there were only about 2 or 3 pharmacies servicing all of Port Moresby.
That's right.
So therein laid the opportunity. So I thought, okay, well, we'll start with one. I never envisaged that we will be where we are today. 25 years ago, as you know, we're celebrating 25 years this year of the operations.
Yes,
So,
you are, and well done on that, I must say. Now, 28 years, what have you seen come to pass in the retail industry, and who is CPL now?
As you know, we started with pharmacies, and then we moved on. It was Port Moresby centric, and the real aim was to take it to the next level, to go nationwide. And we started the rollout. We went to the Highlands, and virtually now we're in every town you can think of. The next big challenge is to really go and take it to the people, to that village level, the second tier town, which we started with Biala and Maprik. We've gone into smaller towns, remote towns like Manus, Lihir Island. We were the first foreign business in Bougainville after the strife we've had in the past. So, you know, pharmacy's been in our blood, and it was the service delivery to the people. Back in 2005, we had an opportunity when the stop and shop business was for sale from steamships. Because we started with our pharmacies inside the stop and shop, they were really the big brothers. So it was more of a David and Goliath story, but we thought, okay, let's take the punch and buy into the supermarket business. So we acquired the supermarket business in 2005. So that gave us the taste of retailing, because predominantly retailing, as you know, it's customer service and delivery of products at a cost-effective price. So whether you're selling Panadols or you're selling a bag of rice, you know, the principles are the same. Pharmacy is slightly different in the sense there's a lot more interaction, a lot more advice required. So there's a very specialized field. But then 2008, again, there's an opportunity that came along with the hardware business for steamships. This was sort of out of our depth, but we had a company approach from Fiji who wanted to enter the market here. And I introduced them to the business opportunity, but they had a comfort level that they wanted to partner somebody who had the local knowledge, which has become a bit of a trend now. We get inquiries all the time with different ventures wanting to come into Papua New Guinea. It's a bit of a challenge for us at CPL, because whilst the opportunities are there, we need to be mindful that there's only so much we can do. So that's how the hardware business started. And as you know, recently we opened the Paradise Cinemas.
Yes.
Once again, it's a joint venture. So, and there are a couple of other things in the pipeline which I can't discuss just yet.
That was going to be my next question. You've taken care of hardware retail, grocery retail.
I think there's opportunities. You know, my aim really is to encourage a lot more players in the market, because there's a huge gap in the market in every sector you can think of, from clothing to footwear to fashion wear to even fast food, books. There's a whole gamut of things. And why I've been speaking at these conferences, there was one in Brisbane prior to that last year, there was another one in Fiji, is trying to encourage people to come into Papua New Guinea. You know, you've got all the positive signs. You've got a great GDP huge mineral resources. The country's in that development space now where, you know, there's a whole bunch of services required. And as you know, in the past 10 years, there hasn't been any brand, you know, that whilst the world had a global financial crisis, Papua New Guinea was really not touched. You know, I had a punchline where we didn't have McDonald's, you know, and you think, well, Fiji and Samoa has got McDonald's. Why hasn't Papua New Guinea? So the message was there's opportunities here in every format of business you can think of.
I just want to ask you a little more to expand on that statement that GFC didn't really affect PNG.
Well, I think we were a smaller economy. We were sheltered by, you know, we don't have any fancy financial instruments, the fancy banking systems that the first world countries had. So, you know, the advantage was, like Australia, who's you know, the strongest in the developed world at the moment with the resources we've had. So I think, you know, we've been really blessed in that sense.
Being in the business for 28 years with an even spread of retail and wholesale outlets across the country, the organization has witnessed the evolution of consumer demand. We'll have that interview right after the break. Now, the CPL Group of companies has a presence in almost every major city and town, employing over 2,000 people. And in the last 28 years of its operations, the company has seen its fair share of challenges in trying to meet consumer demand.
Just taking you back to the 28 years, and you know retail and PNG obviously, what are the changes you've seen and what are the growth areas that you can see?
I think the biggest change is the consumer demand. Again, interesting when the digital technology came, you know, the digital cameras and the smartphones and all that. It's interesting that our biggest growth and demand actually came from not Port Moresby, but from outside Port Moresby, because that's where there's a lack of availability of options for people. You go to the Highlands, you go to the Islands region, and there aren't many retailers. No. So whilst it causes us a bit of confusion, because whilst we're a pharmacy, people expect us to bring innovation into the smaller towns. So I think the biggest change we've seen is the consumers wanting state-of-the-art things. It's no longer the saying which the old colonial masters used to say, PNG, you know, you just sell tin, fish and rice. That's not the economy. People are getting educated, people want good stuff, and people want price competitive items. So, you know, the level, I've got people who are working in my warehouse and they'll have iPhones and MP3 players and all that, because that's the new generation.
It is. It's fair to say that the consumer too has gotten quite savvy with the service that they expect, and also the quality.
With television and, you know, people seeing what's outside. If you look at the duty-free shops in Brisbane and Cairns when you're transiting, you know, you see Papua New Guineans shopping. And why? It's not because necessarily it's cheaper, but that facility is not available in this country. The products and goods, and it's a constant challenge for us. I'm constantly out there lobbying any company that wants to come into Papua New Guinea to say, come on, invest here. You know, the GDP is right, the economy is booming, and there is a lack of it. It gives you a first mover advantage, because there's only so much CPL as a group can keep doing. We've started with pharmacies, into supermarkets, to hardware, to cinemas, and there's a couple of other things that we're getting into, but there'll be a limitation where we'll say, this is all we can do. So.
What's CPL itself? What strategies has it employed to keep abreast of this consumer demand?
From the consumer demand perspective, I think we have a lot of our people traveling overseas to trade shows, trying to understand what's out there in the market. And the biggest challenge really is to try and source that product. A lot of, because our volumes are small, it's a huge challenge to go out to major manufacturers or major suppliers to sort of say, okay, we'd like this for Papua New Guinea. I remember a couple of years ago, I was looking at a fashion clothing chain in Australia, and they were really interested, and all the boxes were ticked because, you know, they had stores out in North Queensland that could service us. Finally, they came to a point to sort of say, well, can you open 50 stores in Papua New Guinea? And I'm saying, no, well, let's start with 2, let's start with 3, one step at a time. But they got disinterested. So that's been the biggest challenge of trying to get international players into these markets. If you look at what's happened in the last 3 to 4 years, while the consumers have changed, you don't see brand names in the marketplace. And we've got population, whilst again a statistics that out of 6.5 million people, there's only 1 million people in the sort of urban areas. There's a constant development and drift into the urban areas, which means your customer base is going to increase continuously.
And Mahesh, I understand you've also gone into the food industry.
Yes, you may have seen about 6 outlets already now under the Bon Cafe title. And it's interesting, again, I mentioned in my speech this afternoon, is, Papua New Guinea is a great coffee exporter. We've won international awards, and there's no coffee chains here. And it has limitations. I mean, we've gone into it because we've got a structured franchise model out of Australia. But we've got challenges there as well because, fresh milk, for example, we have to still airlift it out of Australia. It's a huge cost to it. Ultimately, the customer pays. So there are issues in the supply chain as well. But food is an interesting industry because, there is very few organized chains here. So Bon Cafe is one which we want to build on. As I mentioned earlier, that we're looking at new ventures. We are looking at some other franchises. But believe me, I've been working on it for 3 years now. And I don't want to spill my beans just yet until we sign off on the dotted line. So there's exciting stuff coming in. And we will actually add businesses where it adds value to our current businesses. So we want to be very mindful that it actually butts on to or can leverage off our supply chain or the cold chain storage. We can train our staff within our systems. And Bon Cafe is a classic example because, coffee can be pressed either by a press of a button, you can get a cappuccino, or you can make instant. But being a barista is to make that coffee at the right temperature, the milk at the right timing. We actually sent some of our girls to Australia for training. And it's an amazing experience because there's a good coffee and there's an average coffee. Yes. And for a coffee buff, they will actually understand. So there's been a lot of trials and tribulations in that. And, it's a constant training of girls to sort of just improve their quality on that.
So where are you getting the human capital from?
Well, I've always been a believer that we have to grow people from within. And I think you asked me earlier about the challenges and stuff and the key to our success. I think the key is CPL, whilst we started with 2 or 3 staff. And, our very first staff actually who worked for us, she went on, got married, had children, is now back working for us. And that's a great story. I mean, I've got people who started with me 25 years ago, they're still with me. And this is my big push on the company is that whilst we've got 2,500 people now, we still want to work as a family. It's very critical and it's really the DNA of the company. Our people really, we can go out and do marketing, we can get good products, but the people power that we have is something that makes me proud of. Right across the country, we've got amazing people who've been with us for a lot of years. I mean, there are people coming through now who've been, have passed the 15 years. We've got a special HR package for these long-term employees and stuff. So that's the key. And with the Bon Cafe example, we recruited some people from outside, but they've become part of the CPL Group.
And that's always something, isn't it? Is keeping good staff, I suppose.
It's critical. From my perspective, being in the retail, people are the key to success because every time we open a Stop and Shop, we'll need 150 people. We can't just go and employ 150 new people. So our key staff needs to be going out, setting up stores. Similarly with pharmacies, every time you open a pharmacy, there's at least 20 people required. So you can't keep just getting new people in. Whilst there's an influx of new people coming in, the current people we've got in our system has to keep moving on. And that's the plan we have with our people is you need to grow. You need to grow with the company.
Do stay with us. There's more to come on the CPL Group of companies. You're watching Business PNG. Now, the CPL Group of companies stands as a testament of success for those driven to do business in Papua New Guinea. However, others haven't found a niche or are simply too afraid to do so due to the negativity they get about our country abroad. Well, the CPL Group has gone past those barriers, coming out strong and successful, even listing on the Port Moresby Stock Exchange and a recent acquisition of another business in Australia.
Just going back to the costs of operation, you were mentioning airlifting fresh milk for Bon Cafe, for instance. Now, you've been quoted as saying that retailers spend 5% of their operating costs on security, etc. in this market. Do you want to expand a little bit on that?
Yes, it's unfortunate. Security is a sensitive topic. Whilst we spend a lot of money on guards and all that, I don't necessarily believe that it actually makes it safe. I don't think the situation is as bad, but it's the perception, and which unfortunately Papua New Guinea is branded as unsafe and all that, right. which makes me quite angry when I'm in Australia. And this is a very personal view of mine, because I know suburbs in Sydney where my kids have grown up that are more dangerous than the streets of Papua New Guinea. So I think everything, whilst we've got issues, it's not as bad. So unfortunately, we have to spend a lot of money just for people's perception that it is a secure place. We are going into more technology and using smarter ways to do it with CCTV cameras and all that stuff. But when you really look at it, security, there are two issues. Firstly, there's a personal threat. Secondly, there's pilferage and stealing. Now, once again, when people talk to me, they said, oh, you must have a lot of things stolen in Papua New Guinea. And I said, no. Our international benchmark, when you look at pilferages and stock losses worldwide, our standards and ratios are not too far off. So it's a lot of perception issue. As far as security goes, I think because we've got a lot of female and family shoppers, it's a difficult one. You cut back security, a small incident happens, people get frightened. If you overdo it, people say it's unsafe because you've got so much security. So it's a fine balance. But it is an unnecessary cost, really. You can see the number of security companies that have sprung up in town. On one hand, it's great, it creates employment, but it is an unnecessary cost to the company. We could be spending that same money in a better way.
I suppose it enforces that perception as well, doesn't it? It appears that CPL has been enjoying consistent growth over the almost past 3 decades, and that there recently has been an acquisition of another business in Australia. How does that relate to your PNG interests here?
I'll go one step back. I mean, as you know, we are a public listed company. 2 of the biggest super funds are shareholders. A lot of institutions are. There's a lot of private shareholders. I think we got in excess of 600 actual shareholders. But if you put in the fund members in the 2 super funds, you're looking at hundreds of thousands. So there's always a pressure on the management to perform well, give out good dividends. And there's a challenge of how much we grow here. We've always looked at expansion offshore, but in a very measured manner. And there was an opportunity to buy a pharmacy wholesale business in Australia. Right. It was a small owner-operator business, so it gave us a soft landing into a first world market. We will leverage, it's only 3 months old at this stage, but we will leverage off because it gives us sourcing, it gives us capabilities, and eventually, let's face it, online business is taking over the world right now. And Papua New Guinea is going to be no different. So we're looking at servicing a lot of other countries, possibly through that business. It will give us opportunities for our managers to access new products, new technology, to be on pace with the market. So whilst the business is very small at the moment, we got plans. And the other thing, the advantage we've got in Papua New Guinea is we source products from all over the world, from the US, from Europe, from Asia. And we will also look at synergies where we do private label brands of our own, if we cannot launch that into the Australian or the developed markets.
We'll have the last bit of the interview with Mr. Patel when we come back. With the boom in business activities, the race is on to meet consumer demand. This has added pressure on the government to close the gap between suppliers and retailers by improving public infrastructure. This is a common call from business houses, one of the many groups that also play a major role in community development. The CPL Group is one that has a strong policy on corporate social responsibility, trying to give back to the community. One of its successful community service programs is the Pride of PNG Awards for Women, dedicated to recognizing the contribution of ordinary Papua New Guinea women who tirelessly work towards community development and nation building.
Do you think the government could be doing more to help the retail sector?
Fix the roads. No, it's a serious comment. I mean, I've got farmers that we deal with in Mount Hagen. There's about 400 or 500 of them. We got down the highways here, and it's a constant struggle for farmers to bring the produce to the market. And I think it's absolutely essential that we need that fixed. You know, a farmer should be doing the work on the farms and not spending half a day just coming to the markets here to sell the produce, and it's not cheap. A classic example is a lady called Betty Higgins. There's been a bit of press about her. She's got a trout farm in Mount Willem. I actually went and visited that, and my four-wheel drive struggled to get up there. So my question is, you know, all these years the airstrip is not functional. I think that's the single most important thing with infrastructure, that if we can fix that, if we can help the farmers with better transportation, cut down the logistics cost, it'll be a great boost. Not to me personally, but you know, all the focus has been on our agriculture. And whilst we're the market, we're at the last end. Firstly is the farmers, then is the logistics, then come us as the market. So if farmers are all ready, I think, you know, we've got some fantastic farmers in this country. And I've got a saying that, you know, if you throw a stone in the highlands, it will grow.
Yes.
The land is fertile. But if they grow, how do they get the product to the market? It gets wasted. I've had a farmer cry on my shoulders in Mount Hagen because she throws away all her pineapples because she can't sell them. And here I am in Port Moresby saying, I need more pineapples. How do we get it? You airlift it, you buy a cauliflower or a broccoli in Hagen for 2 kina. You pay 5 kina, 50 toya per kilogram in freight. So the end user will get compromised in that. I think logistics and transportation is the key.
A very valued opinion. I know that you've, or CPL would have a strong policy on corporate social responsibility in this market. Can you tell us a little about the activities you're involved in at the moment?
Yes, I mean, I mentioned to you earlier that, you know, our key focus is our people. And when you look at it, these people go back to the dwellings and where they come from. And our core value, if you look at the CPL values and visions and mission statement, is to serve our community. We've just been naturally part of that with schools, churches, women's group. We were the pioneers in supporting the Mary Safe Place, which got started here some time ago. We've had a number of things like helping the youths out in Gerahu, where we're based. But I feel that is something that every company should be mindful of, is you've got to work with the community and you've got to give something back. And it's not always about giving back, it's just about doing the right thing. Our most powerful program, as you know, is Pride of Papua New Guinea for Women's Empowerment. Now, anything to do with women's social responsibility, we want to be part of that. We are trying to work with farming communities where they actually support the women. The aim is to then hopefully look after the children. It's a great initiative by the government that education is being relieved off from the payment. But our initial plan was to actually help the farmers, help the women gain an investment or income to be able to support their children. We feel that the women folks of Papua New Guinea is going to be the backbone of the society, and that's where our focus is. So we're totally entrenched into that, and we've got some long-term plans to set up something which can create a legacy, and it's not a stop and start thing. That's been the backbone of the CPL.
A noble cause, I'm sure of it. Do you have anything that you'd like to pass on, the wealth of your experience, to any new potential, maybe returning investor who wants to break into the retail sector here?
I think, as I said this afternoon, I think to come in here, people underestimate the talent and competency that we Papua New Guineans have. There is great talent, there's willingness to work, there's willingness to learn. You know, the key things would be to invest in your people and, you know, have a very long-term policy, because right now the country is going through really good economic cycle. This is the time to enter the market, As I said, we as CPL cannot do everything ourselves. We do not want to do everything ourselves. But if people focus on their own people to develop them, maintain them, and have a very long-term view.
Thank you so much, Mahesh. It's been a pleasure having you today. Mahesh Patel, the chairman of the CPL Group.
Meanwhile, the presentation of the CPL Group's 2012 Pride of PNG Awards for Women is scheduled for November. This is the 6th year running since its inception in 2007. And that has been our edition of Business PNG. Do join me next Tuesday for an insight into the Layport development exercise. And before we go, you can watch our programs again online at www.mtv.com.pg and go to our Business PNG page. Your comments and suggestions are valuable, therefore send them through to the address now shown on your screen. I'm Festus Maginap. See you next Tuesday.